Pounding on my front door sounded like a battering ram was trying to break through. I jolted awake, my heart slamming against my ribs as my K9 partner Ranger leaped off the bed, barking like hell itself had arrived. Grabbing my sidearm and badge, Sheriff Alex Reeves rushed to the door, still half asleep but already sensing something was off. A cop's instincts never rest, even at dawn. I peeked through the peephole and what I saw nearly made me laugh out loud. Two men stood on my porch, both wearing uniforms that looked like they were ordered off a cheap online store. Their badges had an eagle emblem, but instead of any official government insignia, they read HOA Law Enforcement. HOA Police? That was a joke. There was no such thing. Yet here they were, standing tall, hands resting on the flimsy belts around their waists, one of them even wearing sunglasses before sunrise like he was about to be in an action movie. The other was holding a clipboard like it was a sacred artifact. I opened the door, keeping my face neutral. "Can I help you?" The man with the sunglasses cleared his throat. "Sir, we're with the Homeowners Association Law Enforcement Division, and we're here regarding multiple violations against community policy." I stared at them, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. "HOA Law Enforcement," I repeated slowly. "You do realize that's not a real thing, right?" Clipboard guy puffed out his chest. "Sir, your vehicle is an unauthorized commercial vehicle. It must be removed immediately or we will be forced to issue fines and take further action." My vehicle? I glanced at my driveway and nearly lost it. They were talking about my police cruiser, my fully marked county sheriff's vehicle, the same one I used to arrest criminals and respond to emergencies. Before I could even respond, a shrill voice cut through the morning air. "That's right, I told you he was breaking the rules." There she was, the nightmare of the neighborhood. Victoria Harrington, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, a woman who ruled our small gated community like a dictator, issuing fines for minor infractions and terrorizing anyone who dared challenge her. She strutted toward my porch, a smug smile plastered across her face. Her blonde bob was perfectly styled, her yoga pants tight enough to cut off circulation, and she held a Starbucks cup like it was a scepter. Behind her, I noticed someone I hadn't expected to see, Councilman Gregory Pierce, standing with his arms folded, watching the scene unfold with an expression of calculated interest. What was he doing here at this hour? As head of the County Planning Commission, Pierce had no business involving himself in petty HOA disputes. "I warned you, Sheriff," Victoria said, emphasizing my title like it was an insult. "The HOA rules clearly state that no commercial or government vehicles can be parked in residential areas overnight, and that thing," she waved a dismissive hand at my cruiser, "is violating our standards. Also, your dog is a breed that isn't allowed under the new HOA regulations." I looked down at Ranger, who was still growling at the so-called officers. Ranger was a highly trained K9, a German shepherd with more discipline and intelligence than most people I arrested. I exhaled slowly, keeping my temper in check. "Victoria, first of all, the HOA has no authority over county law enforcement vehicles. Second, my dog is a working police K9, which means he's exempt from any ridiculous breed restrictions. And third, these men are not real law enforcement." Victoria's smirk widened. "Oh, but they are. You see, at our last HOA meeting, we voted to establish a private security division, and as president, I have full authority to hire officers to enforce the rules." Councilman Pierce stepped forward. "Sheriff Reeves, I think it would be in everyone's best interest if you complied with the community standards. After all, no one is above the rules, not even law enforcement." His smile didn't reach his eyes. There was something unsettling about his presence here, something that made my cop instincts buzz like angry hornets. "Interesting timing, Councilman," I said, eyeing him carefully. "Don't you have bigger issues to deal with than my squad car?" Pierce's smile tightened. "I believe in supporting local governance at all levels, Sheriff, even homeowners associations." I stared at him, then at Victoria, then at the two idiots standing in front of me. This was getting better by the second. "So let me get this straight," I said, folding my arms. "You created your own police force to enforce HOA rules, and now you're trying to arrest the county sheriff." Victoria lifted her chin, not trying doing. Clipboard guy stepped forward. "Sir, if you do not comply, we will have no choice but to detain you for non-compliance and interfering with HOA officers." That did it. I laughed, not a polite chuckle, not a restrained smirk, an actual deep, uncontrollable laugh. The sheer absurdity of the situation was too much. These clowns actually thought they could arrest me. Sunglasses guy did not appreciate my reaction. "Sir, you need to come with us." I wiped a tear from my eye. "All right, I'll humor you. Show me your legal authority. What agency certified you? What law allows you to detain a county sheriff?" Clipboard guy hesitated, flipping through his papers as if he might magically find an answer. Victoria, however, wasn't backing down. "I don't need your approval," she snapped. "I know my rights as HOA president. You're violating community standards and you need to be removed." Pierce's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked at me with renewed intensity. "Sheriff, I strongly advise you to cooperate. This situation could become problematic for your career if it escalates." Was that a threat from a county official? This was getting more interesting by the minute. I sighed. "Victoria, step off my porch." She folded her arms. "Or what?" I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Victoria's confidence flickered for the first time. "Who are you calling?" she demanded. "You'll see." Seconds later, the sound of tires screeching to a halt filled the street. 2 black SUVs pulled up, and out stepped my deputies, looking very official in their real uniforms with real badges and real guns. One of them, Deputy Rodriguez, walked up with a smirk. "Everything all right, Sheriff?" I gestured toward the 2 fake officers. "These gentlemen here claim they have legal authority to arrest me." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Oh really? Under what jurisdiction?" Clipboard guy's face drained of color. HOA. "Right," I said, "and since impersonating a police officer is a crime, I'd love to hear your explanation for those fake badges and threats of detainment." Sunglasses guy turned to Victoria like a scared child. "You didn't say anything about impersonation being illegal." Victoria took a step back. "This is harassment. You can't do this. I'll report all of you." Pierce stepped between us, his demeanor shifting to one of diplomatic concern. "Let's all take a breath here. I'm sure we can resolve this without." Rodriguez took a step forward. "Councilman, with all due respect, why are you even here? This is a law enforcement matter." Pierce's jaw tightened. "I was simply in the neighborhood for an early meeting and saw the commotion." "At 5:30 a.m., I asked, not bothering to hide my suspicion. "That's dedication to civil service." Before Pierce could respond, my phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. It was Rachel Chen, a local journalist who had been investigating corruption in county government. I'd been feeding her information for months about suspicious zoning changes and contract awards. I answered, keeping my eyes on Pierce. "Morning, Rachel, you're up early." "Sheriff Reeves," she said, her voice urgent. "I just got a tip that Councilman Pierce is meeting with Victoria Harrington this morning. My source says they're planning to push through a rezoning request for the old mill property behind your neighborhood. They need your land for access." I kept my face neutral, watching Pierce's expression. "Is that right? Well, what a coincidence. The councilman is actually standing right here on my porch with Mrs. Harrington and some fake cops they sent to intimidate me." Pierce's face drained of color. Victoria looked between us, confusion replacing her smug expression. "What's going on?" she demanded. I ended the call and turned to Rodriguez. "Deputy, I think we need to take Mrs. Harrington downtown for questioning." Victoria's face twisted in panic. "You can't do this to me. I run this neighborhood." Pierce moved toward his car. "This is ridiculous. I have meetings to attend." "Councilman," I called out, "I'd stick around if I were you. We might have some questions about your early morning activities." Rodriguez pulled out a pair of cuffs. "Ma'am, you're being detained for questioning regarding impersonation of law enforcement officers and conspiracy to commit intimidation." Victoria screeched loud enough to wake up the whole neighborhood. "You haven't heard the last of me. The HOA is above the law." Rodriguez clicked the cuffs around her wrist. "Yeah, let's test that theory downtown." Pierce was halfway to his car when Deputy Collins intercepted him. "Sir, we'd appreciate it if you'd come down to the station to give a statement." "This is outrageous," Pierce sputtered. "I'm on the county council." "All the more reason to cooperate," Collins replied smoothly. "I'm sure you want to clear up any misunderstandings about why you're at a sheriff's house at dawn with fake police officers." Victoria was still shrieking as she was escorted to the car. The 2 fake officers, realizing they were in serious trouble, tried to run, only to be tackled by Ranger, who took great joy in showing them exactly why he wasn't just a regular pet. As the doors slammed shut on the squad car, I took a deep breath and turned back to my house, shaking my head. Just another day dealing with entitled people who thought they were above the law. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Got docs from source. Pierce plus Victoria planning luxury development. Need your property as access road. Trying to force you out through HOA. Big story brewing." I smiled grimly. This wasn't just about parking tickets and petty HOA rules anymore. This was about corruption at the highest levels of county government. At the station, Victoria sat across from me in the interrogation room, arms folded, her lips pressed so tightly together they looked like they might disappear. Her usual smug confidence was nowhere to be found. The two fake HOA officers sat in the adjacent room, looking even more miserable. Rodriguez had already got one of them to crack under pressure, which didn't take much since they were nothing more than overconfident security guards Victoria had recruited to play cop. The story was as ridiculous as expected. Victoria had paid them under the table, promising them official HOA police status, complete with some cheap badges and a grand speech about how they were above local law enforcement. Now they were looking at charges for impersonating officers, unlawful detainment attempts, and trespassing. Victoria, however, wasn't breaking so easily. She glared at me like I was the one who had done something wrong. "You're making a mistake," she said through gritted teeth. "I have connections. This is harassment." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "Victoria, you hired two idiots to act like cops and try to arrest the actual sheriff. If anyone's guilty of harassment, it's you." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It was just a misunderstanding." Rodriguez stepped into the room, holding a folder in his hand. He set it down on the table and slid it toward Victoria. "Misunderstandings don't usually involve multiple documented incidents of extortion." Victoria flinched but quickly recovered, pretending not to care. I opened the folder, flipping through the neatly organized reports. It had taken less than an hour of digging to uncover what I already suspected. Victoria's reign of terror over the HOA wasn't just about petty power plays. She had been issuing fake fines to homeowners, threatening them with legal action if they didn't pay up, and siphoning that money into an account she had set up under the HOA's name. A lot of the homeowners had blindly trusted her authority, assuming the fines were legitimate, but some had pushed back. Those who resisted mysteriously found their lawns spray-painted with violation notices, their mail missing, or their tires mysteriously deflated overnight. Coincidence? I didn't believe in those. Care to explain why thousands of dollars in HOA fees have been funneled into an account under your personal control? I tapped the folder. Victoria sniffed. "That money is for neighborhood improvements." "Really?" I asked. "Because according to these reports, you haven't approved a single project. In fact, most of the money seems to have been withdrawn in cash." She shrugged. "I handle things personally." Rodriguez smirked. "Yeah, because I also found receipts for expensive dinners, spa visits, and even a vacation to the Bahamas under the HOA's name. Real generous of you, spending all that money for the good of the community." Victoria's fingers tightened around her arms, but she didn't respond. She knew she was caught. What she didn't know was how much worse it was about to get. I leaned forward. "Here's the part that interests me the most. We pulled records from the last 5 HOA elections. You've been president for 6 years straight. Funny thing, though, nobody remembers ever voting for you." Victoria's jaw clenched, her eyes darting between me and Rodriguez. "That's ridiculous." "It is," I agreed, "almost like you've been rigging the elections." She scoffed. "That's just a conspiracy theory." I slid another paper in front of her. "Then explain why every single election ballot we recovered has the exact same handwriting on it." Victoria's face turned a deep shade of red. I had her now. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. She was calculating, trying to find a way out of the mess she had created. But there wasn't one. She had built her little empire on intimidation and fraud, assuming no one would ever look too closely. Now that we had, the entire thing was collapsing around her. The door opened and in walked Rachel Chen, press badge prominently displayed. Victoria's eyes widened in alarm. "What is she doing here?" Victoria demanded. "This is illegal. You can't have reporters in an interrogation." Rachel smiled coolly. "Actually, I'm here by invitation. Sheriff Reeves called me in after finding evidence that connects your HOA fraud to a larger county corruption scheme. Care to comment on your relationship with Councilman Pierce?" Victoria's composure cracked completely. "Get her out of here. I want a lawyer. This is entrapment." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Nobody's entrapping you, ma'am. Miss Chen is here as a material witness. She's been investigating Councilman Pierce's suspicious rezoning activities for months." Rachel pulled out her recorder. "Mrs. Harrington, I have documents showing that you and Councilman Pierce have been planning to use HOA regulations to force Sheriff Reeves off his property so you could build an access road for a new luxury development. Would you like to explain how that's not criminal conspiracy?" Victoria looked like she might faint. That's not. Pierce promised it was all legal." The moment the words left her mouth, she realized her mistake. Her hand flew to her lips, but it was too late. She had just implicated herself and the councilman. Look, Victoria, I said, my tone shifting to something more businesslike. You can sit here and keep pretending you've done nothing wrong, or you can start talking. Because if you think impersonating officers and running a fraudulent HOA is bad, just wait until we get into the financial crimes and corruption. We're talking serious time behind bars. Her confidence wavered for the first time. Financial crimes, she repeated, voice quieter. Oh yeah, Rodriguez said cheerfully. See, extortion and fraud are one thing, but stealing HOA funds, falsifying records, and misusing money meant for public property, that's a whole other level. We're looking at felony charges, Victoria, and once the homeowners find out about all this, I doubt any of them will be sympathetic. Rachel leaned forward, not to mention conspiracy charges if you were working with Pierce to use HOA regulations to force homeowners to sell below market value. Victoria's face twisted into an ugly grimace. This is a witch hunt. I shrugged. Call it whatever you want. It won't change the fact that we have enough evidence to bury you. She slumped in her chair, exhaling sharply. Fine, what do you want? I exchanged a glance with Rodriguez. That was the first crack in her defenses. She knew she wasn't walking away from this unscathed. The question now was how much damage she could control. I want a full statement, I said. Every scam, every dollar you took, every false violation you issued. You come clean about your arrangement with Pierce and maybe, just maybe, we'll work out a deal. She hesitated. And if I don't? Rachel chuckled. Then I run my story with what I already have, which is plenty. The court of public opinion tends to be much harsher than actual courts, in my experience. Rodriguez nodded. And we'll slap you with every charge we can find and make sure you spend the next decade paying for it. Victoria swallowed hard. She was cornered and she knew it. After a long silence, she finally spoke. I need a lawyer. I wasn't surprised. That was fine by me. The moment she lawyered up, the case would go through proper channels, and with the evidence we had, there was no escaping the consequences. Still, I couldn't resist one last comment as I stood up. You spent years acting like you were above the law, I said. Now you're going to find out what it's like when the law fights back. As we walked out of the room, Rodriguez shook his head. You ever see someone so obsessed with power they can't even recognize when they've lost? All the time, I said, but it's always fun watching them fall. Rachel followed us out, her eyes gleaming with the excitement of a journalist with a big story. Sheriff, I need your comment on the record about Pierce's involvement. This could be the biggest corruption scandal our county has seen in decades. Let's talk in my office, I replied, leading the way. As we settled into chairs, Rachel pulled out her recorder again. I've been tracking Pierce for months. Suspicious rezoning approvals, sweetheart deals with developers, campaign contributions that don't add up. But this HOA angle, using a neighborhood dictator to drive people out, that's new. How deep does this go? I asked. Rachel's expression turned serious. Deep enough that I've been getting threats, anonymous calls. Someone broke into my apartment last week, and yesterday my brakes mysteriously failed. Luckily, I was only going 15 mph. I felt my jaw tighten. You think Pierce is behind it? Or whoever he's working for, she replied. He's not smart enough to orchestrate all this alone. This was bigger than I'd thought. What had started as a confrontation with an entitled HOA president was unraveling into something much more dangerous. Back at the station, the investigation into Victoria's HOA empire was already underway. Homeowners were coming forward with their stories, each one more ridiculous than the last. One woman claimed Victoria fined her for having an unapproved front door color, despite the fact that her house had been that color for 10 years. Another man was fined for excessive garage door noise, a completely made-up rule. The more we dug, the clearer it became. Victoria had turned the HOA into her own personal dictatorship, using it to line her pockets and bully anyone who dared oppose her. And now it was all coming to an end. As I headed back to my office, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. I had dealt with criminals of all kinds, thieves, gang members, con artists, but there was something uniquely satisfying about taking down a suburban tyrant who had convinced herself she was untouchable. Victoria had played the role of queen for too long. Now she was just another case file, another criminal facing justice. And the best part, the neighborhood was finally free of her reign. Or so I thought. 3 days later, Rachel called me in a panic. Someone broke into my cloud storage and wiped everything, all the evidence against Pierce, the financial records, everything. My blood ran cold. How is that possible? I don't know. I had two-factor authentication, encryption, everything. This wasn't some amateur hack job. This was professional. I immediately called Rodriguez, checked the evidence room, make sure everything from the Harrington case is secure. An hour later, he called back, his voice tight. "Boss, we've got a problem. The physical evidence is gone. Someone accessed the evidence room last night using valid credentials." "Whose credentials?" "HOA's Chief Deputy Marshal's." Marshall was my second in command, a 20-year veteran of the department. The thought that he might be involved made my stomach turn. "There's more," Rodriguez continued. "Victoria made bail this morning. Her attorney is claiming all charges are fabricated and threatening to sue the county for false arrest." Something was very wrong. This kind of coordinated action required resources, connections, and inside knowledge. Victoria and Pierce weren't working alone. The day of the HOA meeting arrived and the community center was packed. Word had spread fast about Victoria's arrest, and the homeowners had turned out in droves, eager to see the woman who had ruled over them with an iron fist finally get what she deserved. Some were furious, demanding refunds for the bogus fines they had paid over the years. Others were just excited to watch the spectacle unfold, enjoying the downfall of a self-proclaimed queen who had terrorized them for far too long. I sat near the back, arms crossed, letting the chaos unfold. The HOA board members, who had mostly been Victoria's puppets, were looking more and more nervous as the homeowners hurled accusations at them. One woman stood up and waved a stack of papers in the air, her voice shaking with rage as she spoke. She had been fined thousands of dollars for a non-existent landscaping violation and had almost lost her home because of it. Another man described how Victoria had manipulated the rules to have his shed torn down just because she didn't like the color of it. The board members tried to calm things down, claiming they had no idea Victoria had been running scams under their noses. That excuse didn't go over well. People were demanding resignations, threatening lawsuits, and shouting over one another. It was beautiful chaos, and for once I didn't have to do a damn thing but watch. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get more ridiculous, Victoria showed up. She marched into the room like she still owned the place, despite the fact that she had just posted bail a few hours earlier. Her usual smugness was still there, though her appearance had taken a hit. The perfectly styled bob was slightly disheveled, and the expensive yoga outfit she wore wasn't quite as crisp as usual. But what really caught my attention was her expression, somewhere between defiance and barely contained panic. The room went dead silent as she strode to the front, taking her usual position as if she still had authority. She cleared her throat and raised her hands, trying to quiet the murmurs. All right, everyone calm down," she said, forcing a tight smile. "There's been a lot of misinformation spread over the past few days, and I'm here to clear things up." The room did not calm down. If anything, the hostility grew. Someone from the back yelled, "You got arrested for stealing our money." Victoria waved a dismissive hand. That was a misunderstanding. I almost laughed. A misunderstanding? She had run the HOA like a personal crime syndicate, and she still thought she could talk her way out of this. "I want to remind everyone," Victoria continued, her voice growing sharper, "that I have worked tirelessly to make this neighborhood the best it can be. I have enforced rules that keep our property values high and ensure that we all live in a respectable, well-maintained community." "You extorted us," a man near the front snapped. "I protected this community," Victoria shot back, "and frankly, I don't appreciate the way I'm being treated after all I've done for you." That was it. The dam broke. People exploded with anger, shouting over one another, listing off every injustice Victoria had committed. The HOA board members, realizing that siding with her would be political suicide, started backtracking, distancing themselves from her as fast as they could. One of the board members, an older woman who had mostly stayed quiet during Victoria's reign, stood up and held up a sheet of paper. "Victoria," she said firmly, "the HOA charter allows for a president to be removed if a majority of homeowners vote for it. We have collected signatures. Over 80% of the community has signed this petition to have you removed, effective immediately." Victoria's face drained of color. "You can't do that." "We already have." The room erupted into cheers. Victoria looked around wildly as if searching for some kind of lifeline, but there was none. The very people she had ruled over were now celebrating her downfall, and there wasn't a thing she could do to stop it. She shook her head, her voice growing desperate. "You're all making a huge mistake. I built this community. Without me, this place will fall apart." "No," someone called out. "Without you, we can finally live in peace." Victoria opened her mouth to argue, but it was useless. She had lost her power, her control, her illusion of untouchability. It was all gone. With nothing left to say, she turned on her heel and stormed out, shoving past people as she went. She nearly ran into me on her way out the door, her eyes blazing with fury. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what I'm capable of." I gave her a slow smile. "Victoria, you tried to have me arrested in my own house. I think I have a pretty good idea." She huffed, turning away, and I watched her disappear into the night, the last remnants of her empire crumbling behind her. Or so I thought. 2 nights later, I was awakened by Ranger's low growl. Something was wrong. I reached for my gun, but before I could grab it, my bedroom door burst open. 3 men in tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised. "Sheriff Alexander Reeves," one of them barked, "you're under arrest for corruption, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice." I froze. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Internal Affairs, Sheriff, hands where we can see them." This wasn't happening. Internal Affairs doesn't conduct raids in the middle of the night without warning. This was something else. As they cuffed me, I caught a glimpse of someone standing in the hallway, Chief Deputy Marshal, watching with a grim expression. "Marshal, what is this?" I demanded. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Evidence surfaced, Alex. Video of you taking bribes from that journalist, Chen. Financial records showing payments. It doesn't look good." "That's bullshit and you know it." The Internal Affairs officer shoved me forward. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." As they led me out of my house in handcuffs, I saw Victoria standing across the street, watching from beside a black SUV. Next to her was Councilman Pierce, and beside him, a man I didn't recognize, tall, expensive suit, with the cold eyes of someone used to giving orders and having them followed without question. Victoria raised her coffee cup in a mocking toast as I was pushed into the back of a police car. The next morning, every news outlet in the county was running the same headline: "Sheriff arrested in corruption scandal." The stories all quoted anonymous sources claiming I had fabricated evidence against Victoria Harrington and Councilman Pierce as part of a scheme to derail a major development project. Rachel Chen was nowhere to be found. Her editor claimed she had taken unexpected leave and couldn't be reached for comment. I sat in a holding cell trying to make sense of what had happened. This level of coordination, the speed with which they had manufactured evidence and turned the narrative, this wasn't just Victoria and Pierce. This was something bigger. My attorney, an old friend named Sam Jackson, visited later that day, his face grim. "They've got video of you taking an envelope from Rachel Chen and putting it in your pocket. They've got bank records showing deposits that match the dates. They've got a statement from Marshall saying he suspected you've been on the take for months." "It's all fabricated," I insisted. "Someone's setting me up." Sam nodded. "I believe you, but whoever's doing it has resources, serious resources." "What about Rachel? Have you heard from her?" Sam shook his head. "No one has. Her apartment's empty and her phone goes straight to voicemail." I felt sick. Had they gotten to Rachel or worse? As days turned into weeks, more evidence against me surfaced. Suddenly there were witnesses claiming they'd seen me meeting with known criminals, financial records showing unexplained income, even photos of me at locations I'd never visited. Victoria, meanwhile, had not only been cleared of all charges but was now being portrayed in local media as the victim of a corrupt sheriff's vendetta. She gave tearful interviews about being targeted and how she had only ever wanted what was best for her community. Pierce announced a major new development project, luxury condos built on land that included what used to be my property, which had been seized under civil forfeiture laws due to my criminal activity. The man I'd seen with them, I learned, was Richard Westfield, CEO of Westfield Development, one of the largest real estate companies on the East Coast, with a reputation for getting what it wanted by any means necessary. It all started to make sense. Victoria's HOA tyranny, Pierce's rezoning efforts, they were all part of Westfield's plan to acquire land cheaply for development. When I got in the way, they simply removed me. From my jail cell, I watched as everything I had worked for was systematically destroyed. My reputation, my career, my freedom, all gone because I had dared to challenge the wrong people. But they had made one critical mistake. They thought putting me in jail would silence me. They didn't realize that a lifetime in law enforcement meant I had friends everywhere, including inside the prison system. My cellmate, a former hacker serving time for financial crimes, offered to help after hearing my story. Through him, I managed to get messages to Rodriguez, who had been demoted but not fired, presumably because they couldn't manufacture enough evidence against him. Rodriguez began a quiet investigation, gathering information on Westfield, documenting unexplained meetings between Marshall and Pierce, tracking the sudden influx of cash into Victoria's accounts. Sam, meanwhile, filed motion after motion, challenging the evidence against me, demanding forensic analysis of the videos and financial records. The breakthrough came 3 months into my incarceration when Rachel Chen resurfaced in a hospital in Vermont, recovering from what doctors called a suspicious car accident that had left her in a coma for weeks. As soon as she was coherent, she recorded a statement detailing how she had been followed, threatened, and eventually run off the road after refusing a bribe from Westfield representatives to drop her investigation into Pierce. With Rachel's statement and the evidence Rodriguez had gathered, Sam finally had enough to request a federal investigation, bypassing the compromised local authorities. The FBI descended on the county, seizing records, interviewing witnesses, and analyzing the supposedly ironclad evidence against me. It took another month, but finally the truth emerged. The videos had been deepfakes, the financial records expertly falsified, the witnesses paid or coerced. One by one, the dominoes began to fall. Marshall confessed to tampering with evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. Pierce was indicted on multiple corruption charges. Westfield executives were arrested for witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. And Victoria, she made one last desperate attempt to flee, emptying her accounts and trying to board a private jet to a country without an extradition treaty. She made it as far as the tarmac before FBI agents took her into custody. The day I walked out of jail, cleared of all charges and with a formal apology from the county, Victoria was being processed into the same facility, facing decades behind bars for her role in the conspiracy. As I passed her in the hallway, our eyes met. All her smugness, all her entitlement, all her false confidence had evaporated. She looked small, defeated, terrified. I could have said something cutting, could have gloated or threatened. Instead, I just smiled and kept walking. Her punishment was just beginning, and it would be far worse than anything I could say. Over the next few weeks, the fallout was spectacular. The HOA board members who had enabled Victoria were either voted out or resigned before they could be. An interim board was put in place, and they immediately started undoing the damage she had done. Refunds were issued, fines were thrown out, and new elections were planned. For the first time in years, people in the neighborhood actually smiled at each other instead of living in fear of petty HOA tyranny. Victoria, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. With the criminal investigation into her financial fraud still ongoing, she was facing serious charges that weren't going away anytime soon. The bank had already placed a lien on her house, and it was only a matter of time before she lost everything. I heard through the grapevine that she had been banned from several HOA communities nearby after word of her antics spread. Apparently, she had tried to join another HOA board in a different neighborhood during her brief period of freedom, but the moment people recognized her, they ran her out before she could even attend her first meeting. And the best part, someone had filmed her meltdown at the HOA meeting and uploaded it online. It went viral. The title was something along the lines of "Crazy HOA Lady Gets Publicly Humiliated," and it had millions of views within days. The comment section was brutal. People dissected her downfall, her outrageous claims, and turned her final words, "You have no idea what I'm capable of," into a running joke. Even weeks later, I still caught neighbors quoting it sarcastically whenever someone mentioned an HOA rule. Rachel Chen's exposé on the entire conspiracy won her a Pulitzer nomination. She detailed the entire operation, how Westfield had targeted our community because of its strategic location, how they had installed Victoria as HOA president years ago, manipulating the elections to ensure she stayed in power, how they had corrupted local officials to fast-track zoning changes and bypass environmental regulations. The story sent shockwaves through communities across the country, sparking investigations into HOA practices and development deals in dozens of states. As for me, life went back to normal, or at least as normal as it ever got in my line of work. Ranger and I continued patrolling the county, dealing with actual criminals instead of entitled suburban tyrants. But every now and then, as I drove through the neighborhood, I couldn't help but smile at how much lighter things felt. No more ridiculous citations, no more bogus fines, no more HOA police knocking on doors pretending they had any real authority. Victoria had ruled with an iron fist for years, thinking she was unstoppable. But in the end, all it took was a little bit of justice, a whole lot of community outrage, and just the right amount of karma to bring her down. And if she ever thought about coming back, well, let's just say the neighborhood was more than ready for her this time.